Welcome to the second part of what is production music. Thanks for watching. Thanks for your comments on the first video. The first video, for anyone who hasn't seen it, is linked above here. It was just a brief introduction to a question I got, an Ask Brucey question about what is production music, where I described what it is and what its function is and why one would want to write for it. Thanks to the feedback, I am now going to do quite a few more videos on this subject, touching on concepts and ideas, and then the more technical areas such as setting up your DAW, cut down stems, coming up with ideas, all those kind of things. So stay tuned for that. In part two, this video, we're going to look at concepts and ideas. Probably one of the first things you need to do when you are thinking about starting a production piece of music or a production album. Now, it's very common to work on albums rather than single tracks. And the reason being is when you're starting out and when you're pitching, it's much easier to pitch an album concept than it is just to pitch one track. Again, if you are starting out, go for it. Try pitching one track, try floating one track around, see how you get on. But if you do have an album, I think it's going to help you a lot more. And what do I mean by an album? Well, an album is just like any normal album, anywhere between 8 to 12 tracks of music which specifically follow a theme. That is your starting point. The theme or the concept or the idea of what you are going to write and the style that you're going to write these tracks in. So there are a couple of things you can do to help decide on what the theme or the context or the idea of the album you're going to make is. The first one is look at what's current, look at what's happening currently. And where do you need to go to do that? You need to switch in your TV, you need to get on the streaming services, you need to look at the adverts, you need to look at the documentaries, you need to look at the dramas and the programs that are on and hone in on what styles, what is happening musically. And again, stick to things that are new and current rather than old programs, because that music has been used, it's been created. People and directors and producers are always looking for something which is a little bit new and unique, and that will be your selling point. Now, there is a downside of looking at current trends, and of course I've just mentioned one of the words there. It's a trend. So if you are a quick writer, this can suit you because you can jump on a trend and quickly produce tracks and get them out there and get them to libraries quite quickly while the trend is still current. This could be a bit of a danger because if it takes you a while to write things, you might have missed the crest of the wave of that trend, and you might be left with an album's worth of material that you have dedicated quite a bit of time to, which again is being turned down and rejected because it's just not current anymore. But it is still part of the process to find out what is going on currently, what is out there, what is being written, what styles are current, what people are basically looking for, what is selling, because that is the other thing about library music, which I briefly touched on in the previous video. You've got to remove your mindset. You're writing music to sell it. You're not writing music necessarily for any artistic gratification. Save that for your own projects, where you can be as weird, as wacky, or as insular, or as focused on whatever it is that you want to do. But if you want to do production or library music, you need to know what the trends are and what is selling, because you are pitching this material to a library who are then pitching it to a client, and the client will want things that they can use in their product. So it's a big difference, and it's a big consideration that you need to understand. So that is the first consideration. Keep current, see what's out there. If you're a fast writer, jump on the trend and try and get some material out there to libraries. Can you give me an example of a current trend? Well, a few years ago, there was a style which was a ukulele and whistling, and it was everywhere. The ukulele whistling thing was everywhere, and everyone was jumping on that bandwagon and producing tons and tons of content, which was them playing the ukulele and whistling a happy tune. You probably saw it on adverts. You started to see it in TV programs. It was everywhere. But of course, that trend has gone now. We're over that period. So it was great if you get in there and you can produce that content early on, but be mindful that it was a trend and it's almost become a joke now, particularly in the production music community, where you think, the thing was, oh, do you remember a few years ago, everyone was writing, ukulele and whistling music. It's gone now. So the second thing you can do is, if you don't feel that you're necessarily a fast writer, or this is a side hustle or something that you don't necessarily want to devote a lot of time to, or you can't devote a lot of time to currently, then try and think about or look at timeless classics. Again, you've got to do your research here. There are bits of music and there are styles of music which defy genre and era, so can be used in a wide range of productions, either older or newer. And again, you've got to go and do your research. Watch older TV programs, and production music sites tend to have loads and loads of examples of their work because obviously they're looking for customers. Use that as a resource to find out what type of music is basically going to stand the test of time and isn't necessarily going to age. So sometimes I think things like piano music with strings has a kind of timeless quality to it. It's not necessarily going to age, and it can be used in a wide range of applications. The third factor you might want to look into is perhaps you want to be the person who pushes boundaries. Now, as I mentioned before, some directors and producers are very keen to be seen as forward-thinking or futuristic or really pushing the boundaries. And if you are a composer who is able to do that, that's great. To me, this is probably the riskiest of the three, because you are trying to get a crystal ball and look into the future of what might be cool, what might be current. And of course you don't really know, and libraries and production music houses perhaps also don't really know what is coming up and current. So you can be edgy and clever and it might click or it might not. So again, you've got to be wary of that. So I think in order of riskiness, you've kind of got number one, timeless is going to be the least risky and probably where you might have the most success. But again, there's a lot of material out there already. Current, if you're a fast writer, then you can get in there and churn that material out. Then you will do well at that. Forward thinking, pushing boundaries, that's probably the riskiest of the three, but well worth a shot. So now you've done a bit of research on what's being used and what's out there, and most importantly, what might sell. You then have to come up with a concept or a title or an idea of an album that you're going to write. Now, for me personally, there's three things that I tend to focus on. One is a title, is if I come up with a title. So a recent project that I worked on was called Crime and Procedural. Myself and my writing partner, Rob, had watched a whole bunch of crime dramas, old school dramas, NCIS, 24 Hours in Police Custody, those kind of things, and listened in and figured out what the music was. So we're not going to copy the styles out of there, but we're kind of going to copy the ideas. So we had this title, Crime and Police Procedural. That was the glue that was going to hold everything together that we were going to write on. So we've got that in our mind. That's what we're working for. This is what the album is. We then decided that we would do 12 tracks of music. The next thing for me personally is I like to create what's known as a mood board, because I'm a very visual person. So once we had a title, I went away and searched the internet and came back with a whole bunch of images. Some of the images from the TV programs we watched, just a screen grab, capture, put them all in a document, because that was my inspiration folder. That's where my ideas were going to come with. I get ideas to write from looking at things visually. So I had this mood board of images. Now, if you again are struggling for an idea, perhaps going on Pinterest or just searching Google Images or just searching online for images that you like can be the key of inspiration of the title or the concept of the idea that you're going to use to create your library album. So if you're a visual person, this is a really useful thing to do. The final thing, if you're looking for inspiration for titles, is go online, go to production music websites and look at the titles of the albums that they're creating, that they're putting out there, that they're selling. That can be a real indicator. They're usually things like moods or ambient moods or dramatic moments. Those are the titles, but some libraries actually give them quite grand titles. So go out there, do the research, look at these websites, and as we go through this video series, I'm going to mention at the end some sites to go and look at, and I will put them in the comments below for you to go and check out and hopefully get some inspiration from. Which brings us on to the next question, which is usually lyrics or instrumental. Now this is a tough one, because on the whole, unless you're doing underscore for dramas or documentaries, if you're focusing on production music, which may be going in adverts where there can be a large financial return, then you probably will need lyrics. Now, I would always urge you to perhaps consider writing a lyrical song, because at the very least you get an instrumental piece out of it. If the lyrics are rubbish or they don't want to use the lyrics, you've got a piece of music. Whereas if you just write something instrumental, then you've just got something instrumental, basically. Now, the thing about lyrics and what you need to consider when you're writing lyrics for production music is that you need to make them kind of non-specific and usually happy. Again, do your research, watch adverts. What kind of music do you hear in adverts? What are they singing about? It's like sunshine and loveliness and happiness. Yeah, and you don't really get Trent Reznor style misery or depressing lyrics or anything like that. It's a real skill to develop, but it's useful to know that you probably need to think of like happiness, the word happy, and just general words. No, not even really he or she, just kind of really general. Remember, you are selling music. This is not about you and your artistic output. This is you doing a job to create something that is needed and wanted. So my tip there would be, if you can, write lyrics, because at the very least you have an instrumental track that you can then use at a later stage. Make sure the lyrics are upbeat, happy, non-specific and quite general. But an introduction to how you start the process, what you need to do first before you even write a note, before you even switch on your DAW and get started. You need to think of the concept, you need to think of a title of the album that you're going to write and how many tracks that you're going to write on there. And as a little bonus, remember, if you write 8 tracks, that there are also all the stems that go along with them, because for each track you can break that down into smaller and smaller components that can be used by a producer. They might love your track, but they want a version without the drums. You supply them that. You supply them that when you get to the end. We'll talk about delivery in a later video, but it's something to bear in mind. You're not just writing 8 tracks. You may end up with 64 components that are all sellable. And again, that's one of the real benefits of writing production music. You end up with a lot of content that you can use and be used. So in the next video, we're going to take a concept. I will decide on a concept and explain it in the next video. And then we're going to jump into the DAW and we're going to look at how you might set up a template for the various things that I will point out that you will need to do. The 30-second, the 15-second versions, the cut downs, the length. We will discuss all of those in the next video. I hope that you found it useful. If you've got any further questions, do put them in the comments below. Please do tell your friends about this video, share this video if you think they might find it interested. And if you can, if you are able, please do hit the buy me a coffee button below if you want to buy me a coffee to say thanks. It really helps with me maintaining the channel and doing all this video stuff. Anyway, I've been Brucey. Most importantly, take care, my friends. I will catch you later.